Paul Martinez was reviewing quarterly reports in his downtown office when his phone buzzed. The caller ID showed his daughter's school number. His stomach dropped. Was something wrong with Emma or Lily? "Hello, this is Paul speaking." The voice on the other end was urgent. "Mr. Martinez, there's been an accident. Your wife was struck by a delivery truck outside our school gates. She's been rushed to Metro General Hospital. It's serious, sir." Paul's world tilted. His briefcase hit the floor as he grabbed his keys. "I'm on my way." The drive to the hospital was a blur of honking cars and red lights. Images of Zara flooded his mind. Her infectious laugh, her unwavering support, the way she'd sacrificed her promising career in marketing to help build their furniture business from nothing. At the hospital, Paul found his daughters in the waiting room. 12-year-old Emma was consoling 8-year-old Lily, both their faces streaked with tears. "Daddy!" they cried, rushing into his arms. "It's going to be okay, girls. Mommy's strong," he whispered, though his own voice shook with fear. Hours passed before Dr. Sarah Chan emerged from surgery, her expression grave. "Mr. Martinez, your wife is stable, but I need to be honest with you. The impact caused severe spinal trauma and multiple fractures in both legs. We've done what we can, but she'll likely never walk again. The road ahead will be challenging, physically, emotionally, and financially." Paul's knees nearly buckled. "Can I see her?" Zara lay unconscious, surrounded by monitors and tubes. The vibrant woman who danced with him just that morning looked so fragile, so broken. Paul took her hand and whispered, "I'm here, my love. We'll get through this together." The next months tested every fiber of Paul's being. Zara underwent multiple surgeries, and when she finally came home, their world had completely changed. Their bedroom was relocated to the ground floor. Paul learned to help her with everything: bathing, dressing, transferring to her wheelchair. At first, Paul was determined to be her rock. He took extended leave from their furniture business, learning physical therapy techniques and converting their home for wheelchair accessibility. But as weeks turned to months, the weight of constant caregiving began crushing his spirit. The business suffered without his full attention. Medical bills piled up despite insurance. Zara, once bubbly and optimistic, retreated into silence, staring out windows for hours. Some days she barely spoke. Other nights, Paul heard her crying, thinking he was asleep. "Do you still love me?" she asked one evening, her voice barely audible. "Of course I do," Paul replied, but even he could hear the exhaustion in his own voice. That's when Joy Walker re-entered their lives. Joy had been Zara's best friend since college, her maid of honor, practically an aunt to Emma and Lily. She lived across the country but flew in immediately when she heard about the accident. "Oh, Zara," Joy whispered, kneeling beside the wheelchair. "I should have been here sooner." Zara managed a weak smile. "You're here now. That's what matters." Initially, Paul was grateful for Joy's presence. She brought homemade meals, helped with the girls' homework, and gave Paul precious moments to breathe. Joy was everything Zara used to be: energetic, positive, full of life. But as Joy's visits became more frequent, Paul began noticing things he hadn't before. The way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. How her hand lingered when passing him coffee. The way she dressed, always perfectly put together, even for casual visits. One Saturday evening, while Zara napped and the girls played upstairs, Paul found Joy cleaning the kitchen. "You don't have to do all this," Paul said, leaning against the doorframe. Joy turned, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "I want to help." "You're carrying so much, Paul. Who's taking care of you?" The question hit harder than it should have. Paul rubbed his tired eyes. "I don't even remember who I used to be. I'm not a husband anymore, not really a father, barely keeping the business alive. I'm just existing." Joy stepped closer, her voice soft. "You're human, Paul. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed." That night, Paul slept in the guest room for the first time since the accident. The shift was gradual but unmistakable. Paul began staying later at the office. He found excuses to be elsewhere when Joy visited. But increasingly, he also found reasons to linger when they were alone together. Joy began texting him throughout the day. Innocent messages at first, then more personal ones. "Thinking of you," she'd write. "Remember to take care of yourself." Zara noticed everything. She watched Paul's face change when Joy entered the room. She saw how he no longer met her eyes the same way. She felt him pulling away, and the loneliness was suffocating. One evening after Joy had left, Zara confronted him. "Are you having an affair with my best friend?" Paul's denial came too quickly, too forcefully. "Don't be ridiculous." But Zara had always been able to read him. The lie hung heavy between them. 3 months later, Paul was working late when Joy appeared at his office door. "The girls are asleep, and Zara's having one of her difficult days," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "She barely spoke to me." Paul looked up from his computer. "She's in pain, Joy. Physical and emotional. We all are." Joy leaned forward. "But what about your pain, Paul? When was the last time someone asked how you're doing? Really doing?" The question broke something inside him. Paul's composure crumbled, and Joy was there, offering comfort that had been absent from his life for so long. That night, they crossed a line that would change everything. The affair continued for months, hidden behind concerned visits and helpful gestures. Paul told himself he deserved happiness, that he'd sacrificed enough. Joy made him feel alive again, desired like the man he used to be. But guilt gnawed at him daily. Every time he looked at Zara, still fighting through painful physical therapy, still trying to smile for their daughters, shame threatened to consume him. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Paul sat in his office, staring at a photo on his desk, him, Zara, and the girls at last year's Christmas, all of them laughing. Zara had organized everything despite her condition, determined to make it special for Emma and Lily. He picked up his phone and called Joy. "I can't do this anymore," he said when she answered. "What are you talking about?" "This. Living this lie. I'm leaving Zara." The words tasted like poison, but once spoken they felt inevitable. "Paul, are you sure? Think about what you're saying." "I've thought about nothing else. I'll sell the business, get a fresh start. We can move to Phoenix like we talked about. I can't pretend anymore." 2 weeks later, Paul packed a single suitcase while his family slept. He left a note on the kitchen table. "Zara, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I've sold the business and I'm starting over with Joy. The money from the sale is in the account. It should cover the girls' needs for now. I hope someday you'll understand. Paul." When Zara found the note that morning, her screams woke the entire neighborhood. Emma and Lily found their mother collapsed beside her wheelchair, the crumpled paper in her trembling hands. "He left us, didn't he?" Emma asked, her young voice heavy with understanding beyond her years. Zara couldn't answer. She could only hold her daughters and sob. Paul and Joy drove to Phoenix without looking back. They rented a luxury apartment with a view of the mountains, and Paul threw himself into forgetting his old life. Joy was attentive, passionate, everything he thought he wanted. For 6 months, Paul convinced himself he'd made the right choice. Joy supported his dream of opening a high-end furniture gallery. They lived like a power couple. Dinner parties, weekend getaways, freedom from the crushing weight of caregiving. But cracks began showing in their perfect life. Joy became increasingly demanding about money, insisting on designer clothes and expensive vacations. When Paul suggested scaling back, she'd remind him of what she'd given up for him. "I left my entire life in New York for you," she'd say. "Don't you think I deserve some happiness too?" Paul also noticed how Joy spoke about Zara, with barely concealed contempt rather than sympathy for her former best friend. "She was always so helpless," Joy would say. "Even before the accident. You're better off without that burden." Something cold settled in Paul's stomach whenever she spoke like that. The final revelation came during an argument about Paul's desire to call his daughters on Lily's birthday. "Why are you still obsessing over them?" Joy snapped. "You made your choice. Move on. They're my children, Joy. I can't just forget they exist." Joy's mask finally slipped completely. "You want to know the truth, Paul? I never loved you. I was jealous of Zara our entire friendship. She had everything. The successful husband, the beautiful family, the business. When I saw my chance to take you away from her, I took it. But honestly, if you could abandon a disabled woman and your own children, what kind of man does that make you?" Paul stared at her, finally seeing clearly for the first time in over a year. "You're right," he said quietly. "What kind of man does that make me?" Within a week, Joy was gone, taking half of Paul's remaining savings and leaving him alone in Phoenix with nothing but his regret. Meanwhile, back home, Zara had slowly begun rebuilding her life. Her sister Peace flew in from Seattle, bringing practical support and fierce determination. "You're not going to let him destroy you," Peace declared. "We're going to figure this out together." Peace helped Zara apply for disability benefits, connected her with a support group for people with spinal injuries, and most importantly, reminded her that she was more than Paul's victim. "You built that business as much as he did," Peace said. "You have skills, intelligence, and 2 daughters who need to see their mother fight." Slowly, Zara began physical therapy again. She started a blog about navigating life as a single mother with a disability. Her honest, humorous posts resonated with thousands of readers, leading to speaking opportunities and eventually a book deal. Emma and Lily, initially devastated by their father's abandonment, grew closer to their mother and aunt. They learned resilience, compassion, and the difference between the parent who stayed and the one who ran. 2 years after Paul left, Zara was signing copies of her memoir, Rolling Forward, Finding Strength After Betrayal, at a bookstore when she noticed a man in the audience who seemed familiar. After her reading, he approached. "Ms. Martinez, I'm David Chen. I was in the audience, and your story. It reminded me of my own journey." David was a successful architect who'd lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. He'd heard Zara speak at a conference about overcoming adversity and had been following her work since. "I know this might sound forward," he said, "but I wondered if you'd like to have coffee sometime. Not because I pity your situation, but because I admire your strength." Zara looked at this kind-eyed man and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine interest from someone who saw her as whole, not broken. Their first coffee became regular dinners. David never treated Zara's wheelchair as an obstacle or something to fix. He loved her sharp wit, her fierce protectiveness of her daughters, and her refusal to let circumstances define her. When David proposed 8 months later, he asked Emma and Lily first. "I want to marry your mom," he told them over pizza. "But only if you're okay with it. I'm not trying to replace your dad. I just want to be part of your family." Emma, now 15 and wise beyond her years, studied him carefully. "Do you promise to never leave us?" "I promise," David said solemnly. The wedding was small but beautiful, held in David's garden with Zara radiant in flowing white silk, Emma and Lily as her maids of honor, and Peace crying happy tears. As for Paul, he'd returned to their hometown 6 months earlier, broke and ashamed. The furniture gallery had failed, his savings were gone, and he was living in a studio apartment, working at a hardware store. He'd tried calling his daughters several times, but Emma had told him clearly, "We're happy now, Dad. You chose to leave. Don't mess that up for us too." Paul spent his days regretting every choice that had led him to this point. He'd traded a loving family for an illusion, abandoned his children for a woman who'd never truly cared about him. One day, scrolling social media, he saw photos from Zara's wedding. She looked radiant, genuinely happy in a way he couldn't remember seeing even before the accident. Emma and Lily were beaming, clearly adoring their new stepfather. Paul stared at the images of the life continuing beautifully without him, and finally understood the magnitude of what he'd lost. He typed out a message to Zara. "I saw your wedding photos. You look happy. I'm glad. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but please tell the girls I love them and I'm sorry. I hope someday I can be the father they deserve. I'm trying to become a better man, but I know I have a long way to go. Zara read the message and felt nothing but pity for the man who'd once been her world. She didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Instead, she turned to David, who was helping Lily with homework while Emma practiced piano, and smiled. This was her family now, built on choice, commitment, and love that didn't waver when life got difficult. Paul's abandonment had nearly destroyed her, but surviving it had taught her the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves the idea of you. David had chosen her completely, not despite her wheelchair, but including everything that made her who she was. Sometimes the cruelest betrayals become unexpected gifts, forcing us to discover strength we never knew we possessed. Zara had learned that true love doesn't flee when tested. It deepens, adapts, and endures. As she tucked Lily into bed that night, her youngest daughter asked, "Mom, are you glad Daddy left?" Zara considered the question carefully. "I'm glad we discovered how strong we are," she said finally. "And I'm grateful for David, who chose to love us exactly as we are." Paul Martinez had abandoned his family when they needed him most, trading everything real for something that was never there. But in the end, his leaving had cleared the way for something better. A love built on choice rather than obligation, commitment rather than convenience. The woman he'd left behind didn't just survive his betrayal, she transformed it into triumph, proving that sometimes losing someone who doesn't truly value you is the first step toward finding someone who does. In the quiet of her new life, surrounded by people who'd chosen to stay, Zara finally understood that Paul's leaving wasn't really about her disability. It was about his character. And that revelation, painful as it was, had ultimately set her free. This story reminds us that true love isn't tested by perfect circumstances, but by difficult ones. Sometimes the people who abandon us do us a favor, making room for those who will truly stand by our side. Subscribe for more inspiring stories of resilience and redemption.